Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today is August 15th. That's right, 15 more days. And at least the people in this part of the world, probably some of you have already started sending your children back to school, but school starts. But just as important, or in my opinion, maybe even more important, is the NFL season starts. So if you're not a sports fan, you better put that all into your schedule now because it's already in my schedule. So just look at the Eagles schedule and you know what I'll be doing on Sundays and Mondays and Thursdays. Oh, and the season starts on a Friday in Brazil. Did you know that? Anyway, this is MSP Initiative, MSP Talk. We're going to get some housekeeping out of the way, and then we're going to get into the good stuff. So, MSPinitiative.com. Check it out. If you don't know how to spell the word initiative, Google it. They'll spell check you and put it together. MSPinitiative.com. This session is being recorded, and we will post it to the sessions page on MSPinitiative.com, as well as our YouTube page, our podcatchers. You can download, like, forward, share, subscribe. You know what to do. Some good content here goes all the way back to March of 2020. We all know what happened then. We just been doing it ever since. Then we get into MSP Community Minds. This is our third MSP educational event that we've put on. We are in Denver again. Started this last year in Denver, went to Nashville earlier this year, now back to Denver, September 25th and 26th. By the way, this is a 100% free to register event. There's no $9.99, $12.99, $3.99 registration fee. And by the way, this is not a trade show. This is 2 days of actually slam-packed content. Panels with MSPs like yourself, and workshops, not a 45-minute PowerPoint presentation with a credit card swipe at the end. There is no veiled pitch here. This is real deal content. Here are the MSPs. Here are the panelists. We are going to teach you on things, and you're going to learn from the people who have figured things out that maybe you have or haven't, and then you can decide if it applies to your business. You get to choose what you do, and you get to choose to network with people, which if you've talked to anyone who's ever been to an MSP event ever, it tells you is the best part of any event they've ever been to. So, MSP Community Minds, please join us in Denver, September 25th and 26th. Next is the MSP community block parties. And yes, probably what we're best known for. There are 5, not 1, not 2, not 3, 5 more of these for the rest of the year. So get your pencils out. Here we go. We got IT Nation Australia next week. So if you're going to be in Sydney, we'll be there too. On August 21st, we're going to be doing a block party in Darling Harbour. If you're not there, you're going to miss it. And plus, I hear all the Aussies down there love to drink. Surprise. So absolutely free for MSPs to register to any of these. Next, we have PAX 8 Beyond in Berlin, Germany. We're so excited to go to a new country. It'll be on October 14th. Can't wait to announce the location. It's going to be beer focused. We are in Germany right after Oktoberfest. I digress. There it is. So please register for that one if you're going to be in Germany. Then we got DattoCon in Miami. So if you like South Beach, we'll be at the Fontainebleau with you October 29th on property. No buses, no Ubers, no walking, just literally right there. So we'll be there on October 29th that evening doing a block party. Then the big one, IT Nation Connect in Orlando. We are in the middle of negotiating for our artists, but this is the big one. It'll be the first night of IT Nation. We'll be at Icon Park on International Drive. We will have a entertainment, radio recognizable band that we will be putting on. It'll be November 6th, 9 p.m., Icon Park. Again, register, join us. Can't wait to see you there. And then we close out the year back again in Sydney because we just love the people down under. So we'll be back at DattoCon Sydney, November 12th, Darling Harbour again, and we'll close out the year with that block party. So 5 block parties, 3 continents. What do you got to lose other than a good time? It's absolutely free for you to attend. Please register. Can't wait to see you there. Then we have some community offers. Find any deals on the community offers page that you want to take advantage of, please do so. And the industry calendar will shake you all the way to the end of the year because we all know that September, October, and November is like literally you could not be home. You could just literally be at an event for 3 months straight. And that is all the housekeeping at MSPinitiative.com. So now that that's out of the way, we bring for the first time Steve Weinstock onto the podcast from a company called Josys. And so we're going to learn a little bit about Steve because we always love to know everybody's journey, right? You're in tech land. How did you get here? What's your story? Then we'll learn a little bit about their company. We'll probably talk some current events, maybe a joke or two. Who knows? We'll see. Hi, how you doing today, Steve?
Hey, George, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. And I got to
Absolutely.
say, I am a Niners fan. That said, all of my family is originally from Philly. So I've got this Eagles underlying kind of green as well. So I hear you.
So whoa, hold on. I got to fix this. So your family's from Philadelphia, but you're a Niners fan. How did that happen?
Yeah. So family born and raised both sides, Philly, so many relatives still in the general vicinity. Moved here being San Jose, California, where I'm at today, when I was 5. So more or less, I can't consider myself a native, but for all practical purposes, given my age, pretty darn close. So hence Niners right up the road.
I don't know. The sports radio people here in Philadelphia might call that a violation.
I think probably would.
I'm just saying, like, for all the Dallas fans that happen to be everywhere who have never been to Dallas, have no family from Dallas, no pedigree, right? They just the star, America's team, Jared Jones.
Right.
Like you haven't won a Super Bowl since like the VCR was popular. Okay, all right. I like, but if you're from Texas or your family's from Texas and you came from Texas, I'm not gonna fault you for being a Cowboys fan. Like, I get it. So if I'm born and raised in Philadelphia, and you said you moved in 5, okay, so we can question that. But I'm
Hey,
an
I
Eagles,
had no
I'm a
choice in
Philly
that
fan.
move. I had no
I'm,
choice.
okay, all right. I just want to, just so that if you ever are rolling through Philadelphia, if you're listening to this, you happen to turn on sports radio, this is debated. This is talked about all the time. Like it's the unwritten rules of sports fandom. So sorry for throwing the flag here, but
Fair
but
enough.
we'll see how it all shakes out this year, Steve. I'm not so sure the I hear your wide receiver is looking for a trade, right? Like
Yeah,
it's all
seems
a bunch
that
of
way.
names.
Definitely. Definitely.
Okay. All right. Sorry. I just go to that native sports talk. So,
Yeah.
and just to let you know, because, I'm not just giving you a hard time about where you were born and raised and what you should be doing. Jen, who's behind the scenes here on this podcast, she says she's from Connecticut, but she was born and was like, I think moved at 8 from New York to Connecticut. And I'm like, you're from New York. You live in Connecticut. Sure. I got you. But you're from New York. You're born and raised in New York. We debate this all the time. She says she posted here. She's like, I will die on that hill. Okay, that's fine. We'll see. Just like
I got you, Jen. I
here
got
you
you.
go. Oh, here you go. I got one more. Just like Taylor Swift is actually from Philadelphia area, not Nashville, not New York. She was born and raised outside of Philadelphia. So she's from Pennsylvania. Okay, like erase all the things that you know about where you think she's from. She's supposed to be an Eagles fan. I understand, Travis Kelce and the Chiefs, and I got it. But underneath of that red shirt should be a green one. That's it. I said my piece. All right, Steve, give us your story.
Yeah, sure. So you were asking basically how the heck did I get where I'm at? The short version of it is probably just weird blind luck, right? But that said, after grad school and such, went into tech world out here in the Bay Area. I didn't start out in this space, but believe it or not, worked for a company that made voicemails. So basically, all those things that nobody wants today, we made that back way in the day. Optel for all those who may know of it. But then, got into what I would call at the time hosted applications. There was no such thing as SaaS, right? Nobody knew what the heck that was. These were like, think IP centrics in the cloud. What's a cloud, right? Exactly. So I've been in what I would call basically the SaaS space for a lot longer than I care to admit. 20-ish years, more or less, before there was such a thing as SaaS. Worked for various companies along the way. Obviously, with Josys today. Previously was with GoTo and LastPass under the old Log Me In banner. Blue Jeans Network, if you're familiar with them, bought by Verizon, Avaya, ShoreTel, bought by Mitel, and I could go on and on. But the underlying side of all those is effectively cloud applications for businesses of any and various sizes brought to market either directly or through channels. More recently, before coming to Josys, like I said, I was with Logmein in various journeys as they went private equity, et cetera, and among other things was responsible for effectively what we called strategic partnerships, which was anything from think ISV technology partnerships and co-selling to strategic channels and distribution activities. So me, my team, we had that responsibility with ultimately those 3 companies, LogMe and GoTo. LastPass, whole other story if you want to hear about that someday. And then coming into Josys, where I joined about a year ago now, I guess. A number of us here from previous lives all kind of came together. Josys is about a 3-year-old company, plus or minus. We've got about 150 to 200 people nowadays. We are fat private. We raised our 2nd round of funding back in September, bringing us to a little over 125 million US. We are a Japanese company, founded, headquartered still out of Japan. The US is now that island. We, in the US, we talk about how all the time companies expand out into places like ANZ, Australia, New Zealand, and you got the poor folks who are sitting down there, 4 people trying to create this environment and business in the islands, and we're doing that here. So today we have, I think we're up to about 500 paying customers on our solution globally. But yeah, we're embarking on the North American business, and so my role, among other things, we wear many hats, but my role effectively is go-to-market strategy and implementation for North America, primarily around the MSP business, and I have a cohort that works on some of our direct activity.
Okay,
So,
well, yeah, a Japanese company. It's been a minute. I mean, but like, I mean, Japan for at least the 90s. Like, I think Panasonic. I think, you know, like a lot of stuff came out of that country. That's cool. So, and I love the journey, right? By the way, because you've been through like multiple layers of this, and funny that like, yeah, you're like, well, I work at this company, you got acquired by this company and this company. Like this is kind of sort of how it, the cookie crumbles a little bit, and no differently in MSP land, right? Like we're hearing, obviously there's been acquisitions in this space and continue to be, and we hear about things that are impending. So, interesting times. So, what does this company do? Like, what is the pitch of like, why should I look at this, and what is it going to help me with?
Yeah, good question. Great question, actually. So, the pitch, high level. Josys is a multi-tenant platform. So what's known as a SaaS management platform. Okay, what the heck is that? Basically tools for MSPs to help manage all the cloud applications that their clients use today. Cloud applications, generally speaking, we're talking about end user apps, Zoom, like we're using today, Slack, some CRM, et cetera, et cetera. Today, we integrate with I think we're up to close to 300 different cloud apps, and we add 5 to 15 every particular month, depending on customer demand. But what do? We help the MSP essentially give them 360-degree views into their clients. It's a multi-tenant solution again. So their clients' perspective, we can show them, the MSP, views into all the cloud apps that their clients are using, some of which the MSP might sell them and they know about, some of which they might not. We add governance around those activities and those apps. So governance, what I mean by that, shadow IT. Again, all of us know what applications our company has provided us, what we should be using. The reality is we log in and use other things because we've used them previously, had good experiences with them. They help us in our solution. A friend told us about it, whatever. We just try apps, and much to the dismay of, quote unquote IT, whether it's on-site IT or MSPs. In addition, we help with licensing cost optimization. So what does that mean? We'll probably get into this, so I won't dive too deeply into it. But basically, there's an awful lot of applications that people have, licenses that are being paid for them to use, that they just don't use, right? There's lots of examples we can get into about that, and there's opportunities for optimization around that, primarily which is wasted spend and getting rid of it, right? So we can highlight that as well. And then we also add a layer of effectively what's efficiency around onboarding and offboarding. So having the ability to help automate those activities rather than going to Zoom's admin portal and providing you, George, a license, and Slack's and providing you a license, et cetera, when you join the company, one platform to do that, as well as the offboarding when inevitably you leave for whatever reason, to do that more efficiently and literally recover all those licenses. So they're not just blocked and you're still paying for it, but take it away from you when you leave the company on Friday at 5 p.m. and at 5:01, it's now available for the next person who's joining. So in a nutshell, that's what we do. It's that management platform for MSPs to help them better manage their clients of any shape or size.
Okay, that's interesting. So like, here's the problem. If you don't know that it exists, how does, like, other than going and asking the customer, hey, can you either give me a list or can you give me your credit card statement so I can figure out what you're actually paying for? Because like short of that, how does this discovery part work? Because like to your point, sometimes the people inside the company don't even know, like especially larger companies, right? Like smaller companies a little bit easier. But in larger companies, like, oh, that department bought something, they didn't tell anybody, right? They just put it in, it hits credit card, they done, right? And like the person who's supposed to be inside the organization who's directing traffic doesn't even realize it exists.
Yeah, I think so. First off, I started out with we make a SaaS management platform, and I always follow that with, okay, what does that mean in plain English, right? Because nobody, generally speaking, knows what that is. In fact, Gartner literally just started covering the space and put out their first Magic Quadrant a month or so ago now, around SaaS management platforms, and we were lucky enough to be a part of that for the first time ever. So that concept is starting to get socialized, right? And the awareness is starting about a platform, but it really comes down to some degree the idea of what are the challenges, right? What are the problems, I guess, that are out there, the use cases that companies know about, that they have, meaning they know they have these problems, but they have no idea that there's a potential solution, generally speaking, for these things. And so what are some of those problems? Well, I talked about lack of governance, not knowing what people are downloading, using, etc. SaaS sprawl, basically, is what it comes down to. Security issues around that, right? One of the classic examples, my company, we're a Google Workspace organization, so we use Google Drive. What if I log into Box, Dropbox, pick your other file sharing service? Inherently, they're good solutions. They're secure, overall, but it's a security issue for my company because my data, company data, could be leaving my premise, so to speak, i.e. to Google Drive, and they don't know about it, among other things. So there's a security shadow IT aspect problem that IT generally has, and I always ask, MSPs when I talk to them, like, hey, does your client have problems with shadow IT? And the answer is always, I don't think so, but I don't know what I don't know, right? And
so immediately the answer to me is, then the answer is yes.
Yeah, so the answer is, I think, yes. And so one of the value props that that we have is I can literally show you who are the people in that client who access Box or accessed, it doesn't matter, some other application that you aren't managing or you aren't providing for those employees. How, when did they do it? Literally, was it last week? Was it 2 months ago? How many times have they done it? Et cetera, and who is doing it? So we can show that information. Costs are rising. I talked about, SaaS sprawl. The costs are insane. If you want to think about the past,
So let me
what are we,
just pause you.
24 now?
Let me just pause you real quick. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
assume something, and I just want you to maybe tell me if I'm on the right path. So you got these 300 integrations or so, right?
Right.
Your system has a way to ask each one of those entities, does this user under this email address exist? Yes or no?
Yes, we have that capability. It's primarily based off of what's known as the IDP or the identity provider, meaning typically Google or Microsoft Azure, if you will. So essentially, what it comes down to at a real high level, simple level is if you, George, say you're on Microsoft, log into application X, that gets recorded in, among other places, the audit logs of Microsoft in your case or Google Workspace. Our initial integration to bring in all the users of the company that an MSP is managing is by way of the IDP. So those audit logs essentially come to us, which tells us you logged into Box or Picture application.
I see. That's clever. That's slick. I mean, because I was just curious. I was like, how does this discovery go? Like, either all 300 applications, like you can check via their API if the user does or does not exist somewhere on their platform, or you're actually doing it the other way. They're like, well, we're assuming they're signing in with one of their the two bigs, right? Microsoft, Google, because pretty much 99% of businesses are going to use a combination of those. Okay, got it. So, like, what happens then if you do this discovery, you go through the audit logs, and that an application that they did sign into isn't on your list?
Your list being the 300-ish applications, right? So doesn't matter so much. We can highlight really any application that they have logged into with that. Let's just call it, keep it simple, their email, work email. We don't care if it's your personal Gmail or Yahoo or whatever you're using. If it's your work provided email, that's effectively what gets surfaced into what application that you're choosing. So we can highlight if it is an application that we already literally work with. You can track it as what we call a managed app from an IT perspective and MSP's perspective. If we don't have an integration with it, we still surface it. So like we don't have an integration with tons of different, well, I'll call it consumer apps, and even things like ChatGPT. But we can surface that you logged into ChatGPT with your work email, etc. And then the MSP can decide, hey, what do I want to do about this, right? Usually that means talking to the actual client and saying, is this a problem, etc., making them aware and deciding if they want to take action on that, whatever that may
be. Okay, fair enough. I mean, the fact that you can discover it is great, and then obviously provide visibility is the first part, right? And then, there are other products out there that like they're labeled RPA products, right? That like tie into robotic process automation, that like tie into multiple apps. I mean, there's a little bit more work involved to like click things together, right, to make it do what you want it to do. But I think this, the first big part is you can discover things that are hidden, which is great. Because by the way, this is not a small problem, and it's an expensive one. And by the way, when everybody raises their prices, it just gets exponentially more expensive. I love the second part of this, which is the part that every MSP on the planet complains about, because it's just the time, and it just if they're, especially if there's hey, we have all the documentation, it just takes a lot of time, right? Especially when, like, if the average, I don't know what you see the average as, but like, let's say the average end customer of MSP is using 14 to 18 systems. I mean, like, user onboarding could be like a multi-hour process here, right? Like, it's not exactly instant. That being said, the automation of onboarding and offboarding is not a small topic. Like, it's almost a separate industry to some degree.
Correct. And back to the whole integration side of things, of the 300-ish that we work with today and growing. Generally speaking, those integrations are structured primarily on the ability to provision/deprovision a license within that application. So that's where I would say the hard work comes in. Hard work being ultimately it's the other party's APIs that we work with. So Zoom, pick an example. What kind of APIs do they have relative to the ability to actually provision a license to you when you join a company or take it away for whatever reason? That's where some of the magic happens, I think. And unfortunately, I think to some degree that's kind of out of our hands. It's a function of what does, again, Zoom in this example decide they want to make available, right?
Sure, I get it.
Certain tiers
But I
have
mean, all right.
availability.
So let's say that, let's go back to my fictitious average, 14 to 18 app systems, login,
Yeah.
whatever. Like if your system can do half of those, 2/3 of those, now my time investment to get the user provisioned for my end customer just went down dramatically. I mean, so not only is it the time savings of that, it's the consistency of that. Human beings clicking on buttons sometimes miss stuff. And so this is inherently where a lot, like we've seen every security news story that comes out be like, oh, well, it was an Amazon account that wasn't provisioned properly and they forgot to check a box. And it's like, oops.
Yep. Most secure things are user error. It's a human, right? And technology is trying to get around all that.
Yeah, well, it's between the chair and the keyboard, right? We always hear this. Or I keep bringing up CrowdStrike because it's still so new, but it's like, hey, somebody made a line coding change that broke everything, right? Like that was maybe there should have been a second step. Like, hey, let's validate what you wrote before we send it to everybody. But hey, I digress. Like, I'm not a software developer. I'm just talking out loud. So bottom line is when you provision accounts, this is where things usually get missed.
Yeah, there's opportunity for error for sure. You talked about 14-ish or so applications, and I think that number varies a lot depending on the type of company, i.e. maybe the vertical, and frankly, the size. On average, I would say the SMBs somewhere around a couple dozen-ish, depending applications.
Let me just rattle off. Like I'm thinking about a typical sub 50 person company, right?
Yep.
Let's try Office 365 or Gmail, whichever. Something to make the phone ring, right?
Yep.
Some sort of chat messaging tool, Teams, Slack, something like that. If there's a web meeting tool separate of the phones, right? Like Zoom or Teams, something like that. Okay.
CRM.
File sync and share, right? Box, Dropbox, OneDrive, whatever. Some sort of CRM, ERP, PSA, right? Okay, cool. And then we have things like QuickBooks, right? QuickBooks Online, whatever, right? And then you have maybe something for remote access, right? Like a go-to, since you brought them up, or log me in, or whatever, okay? And then they're probably doing something around let's say something like a Canva, right? Like some sort of graphics marketing, yada yada yada, a newsletter type system, a MailChimp, something like that, right? So I'm at 10. I didn't get that far.
No.
I'm just off the top of my head. I could probably think of probably another 10 easily, right?
Sure.
Just
Calendar
saying,
scheduling, things like Calendar, right?
Yeah,
I mean, there are dozens and dozens of these things, literally hundreds of these things, and the larger the organization, the more they're going to use.
Right.
When you get up to
like to the point where the MSP was encouraged to install a password manager tool, because these apps sometimes, like you see it, it's like, oh, so-and-so's database got hit. Now all your ticket masters now in the dark web. And it's like, but if you use the same password everywhere, they just need to figure it out once and then they'll try it everywhere, right? So let's put a password manager in place because you don't even remember your password. So like, let's randomize those so that we can limit your bleeding. Like that was the middleman, like Band-Aid to try and get past the issue.
Tell me about it as an last pass person. I hear you. Here's the other challenge around that. Okay, they put in that middleman, and sake of argument, they use 1Password. Okay, they being my company, right? Okay, I've used one LastPass or Keeper or pick your other solution personally or in a previous work environment. I've got a ton in there. I end up just logging into that one again, in my new work. And that's sort of the, call it, lack of potential security. The sprawl aspect, the lack of control that IT starts to have or grows because of individuals and what we do. Classic example, this is not a security issue, I don't think, generally speaking, but I joined Josys, right? And I used Calendly in my previous life. And I asked, hey, do we have Calendly accounts? Nope. I said, all right, fine. Bing, 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 sign up for my own under my own Josys email and just start using it, unbeknownst to my, well, kind of unbeknownst to my IT team because I kind of asked first. But is that a security issue? Probably not, generally speaking, right? Productivity tool would just do it, but it's a lack of control now that IT has in some respects.
Well,
And
here's
maybe
what
if enough people do it, they'll get a corporate account, right? Who knows?
but here's where, so you create this account on the fly, and then the password you use for this account is the password you use for your email, and the password you use for your VPN, and like it just gets where, like, that's where it breaks down, and people don't think about this. Oh, and by the way, you happen to also use it for your bank account and your PayPal and your and like it just gets worse and worse and worse, right? So like people don't realize this that are outside the IT circle, right? When their stuff gets hacked and they're like, oh, how did that happen? It's like, well, because you were using the same variation of your password so many times. Like it didn't take somebody that long to figure it out once they put it together. So like, they're like, well, that data should never make it onto the internet. It's like, well, unfortunately, I don't know if you were watching the news just yesterday. They said it's possible that every social security number ever provisioned is now exposed.
Yes.
Come on, man. Every social security number ever provisioned. So that means if the government, who they're the people that print money last time I checked, can't get it right.
A lot of it.
What does that put you in? You're in trouble.
Yes. And then ultimately you are so much deep trouble because literally everyone got released. It's like throw up your hands and litigation.
So I guess everybody needs to go sign up for the 1-year credit card or credit monitoring service. Like that's on, By the way, all they tell you, like by the time something's happened, that you're being notified after the fact, right? So that credit monitoring service is like not necessarily they're going to stop anything, to be honest.
No, in fact, that's a great business to be in if you think about it, because somebody else is paying them to do that every time there's some sort of breach, right? So,
right. I mean, talk about. I was like, now, if you really want to get into the, I wonder if they're on the other side of this and they're creating issues so that people buy their service, right? But I digress. Credit monitoring, although people like Symantec bought LifeLock. That's another acquisition, right? LifeLock, that's very popular, right? Because what they do, not only do they monitor, they give you up to, what was it, $1 million, or this is what they advertise, $1 million of credit restoration funds, basically, or service, right? Up to $1 million. Lawyers or whatever, in order to get your back to normal, whatever that means. I've never been there and I've never seen it, but if memory serves, wasn't the original CEO of LifeLock, like he had some truck rolling around Times Square, put his social security number on the side. He's like, try and steal my identity. And it did happen like double-digit times. So like,
that sounds familiar, but I don't literally remember who it was.
So by the way, don't suggest that you do that, any of that. I'm just saying what's already happened. Go ahead.
Kind of makes you want to disconnect and move into the middle of a long compound somewhere in the woods, huh?
People do it, and the wealthy people buy islands, and they just like set up shop, and they're the only thing on there. But I'm not sure that's affordable for everyone. So okay. So we can figure out what people are using, even if it's not in your integration list. If it is in your integration list, I can provision and deprovision, which consistency, time savings, and like, let's make sure that people are set up properly. That's super important. And quite frankly, we just talked about why, but if you haven't picked up on it, this is where things usually fall down. And then like later on after the fact, when they have a very long investigation to find out, well, so-and-so didn't check a box. Okay, cool. And then the other part, it's like, let's call it the third part of your tripod, is usage. Right. You're trying to, across all these different applications, figure out, analyzing how it's being used, how much it's being used. And then I assume the idea is that you can figure out if that, something can be adjusted to save. I'm guessing.
Yeah, we call it license optimization, which is both a literal optimizing the quantity of licenses, but maybe more so the optimizing of your spend. I can tell you, industry data around things like half of apps aren't used after 90 days, active usage basically. But let me tell you like literal data that we have out of our 500-ish customer base. And then most of this is not going to be a surprise to you, right? So let me give a little background on it, right? There's this little thing that happened about 4-ish years ago, 3.5-ish years ago called COVID. Everybody goes home, right? If you've heard of it, right?
I think I heard about it. I'm not sure.
All right, Google, all right?
Right.
But everybody goes home. Businesses, to a large degree, still need to continue, et cetera. All these applications come flooding into the market like Zoom, Teams, et cetera. Yeah, they were out there before, but instead of the sales org needing Zoom, now literally everybody needs it, right? A license. Great. All that happens, floods the market, pick your application, Zoom being just one example. Flash forward to today. You have this session, right? You gave me a meeting invite. This is your license. It's not mine. I'm not using it. It's my license. It has nothing to do with this, even if I have one. So you get into this position where through our data today with Zoom, we've got our customer base has about 35 to 37% of their Zoom licenses are literally unused. Okay, I don't know what Zoom goes for these days, but even if it's $10 a license, and it's probably a lot more, right? That's a lot of money in every company that is wasted. Other top ones, Salesforce.com. I was onboarding a company probably about 3 months ago or so now. We do this onboarding of their applications, et cetera. Long story short, Salesforce.com is one of their applications. They literally see a person in their company who hasn't logged into Salesforce.com in 10 months. Okay, at $150 to $200 license, depending on what the license is, we're talking a lot of spend, right? I think the average non-usage in our customer database is about 25 or 7% for Salesforce. Adobe license, I had a need for some form of signing of a document or editing some PDF or whatever, and he came and went, right? Maybe I use it again in 6 months, maybe I don't. Who knows? IT is like, well, I did my job, I gave them the license, move on. Nobody knows if these things are actually used. So we can show that essentially usage data, right? And we call it license optimization, and we call it underutilized, which more or less basically says, have you used it in the last month, plus or minus? And then we can highlight that, right? And then, as an MSP, among other things, you can go to your clients and say, hey, did you know George hasn't used any of these things in X months? 1, is he doing his job? 2, let's take away the licenses, right? So there might be reasons, but point being is, I think one of the huge value props that we can bring is we can give information to the MSP so that they can go to their clients weekly, quarterly, whatever it is, and say, hey, look, here's this information. I'm providing you more value. I'm making myself stickier with you. I'm justifying whatever my fees are. I can charge more fees, right? Things like that. And I think that usage data is just some of it, right? Or lack of in this case.
No, I mean,
it's the optimization side.
The trick that happened about 5 years ago, where like all these tools popped up that would scan the dark web and see if they could figure out what passwords are listed there under accounts that had already been breached under your email address, right? That was a pretty cool trick. Because if you showed up to your prospect, your client, and said, hey, by the way, is your password yada, 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 and they're, oh, how did you, right? Like they're shocked. It's like, where did you, like, are you monitoring my screen? Like, what's going on? Like, this is like a similar approach here, right? Where it's like, hey, I'm just trying to make sure we're doing a good job for you. So-and-so in sales hasn't logged into their Salesforce in 5 months. What do you mean? It's like, well, I'm just telling you, like, says that they haven't actually logged in for 5 months. They're like, well, could they have been signed in that whole time? No. They get logged out automatically after so many hours. He's like, so what? How are they working? Well, that's a good question.
Hmm.
Are they? And like all of a sudden, it's like a red flag. They're like, well, thank you for telling me that. Let me go figure out what's going on. Like that is, except one could argue what has more value. Well, if you're using the same password everywhere, that could be damaging. But like every company that I know of, or most companies, their most expensive expense is people,
Sure.
payroll. So if you're hiring someone that's literally not doing the job, or here's the one that's a little bit harder to track, but you start to get the cookie crumbs, maybe you can figure it out. Yeah, you've heard of this, I'm sure. The people who are working multiple jobs at the same time.
Yeah, right.
Like, hey, I'm working 3 full-time jobs. They just don't know about it. It's like, that's a problem.
Yep, definitely. Now, if they're using separate laptops, I don't know, but we can, through, their accounts and such, like I said, if it's tied to their corporate email, we can see. We can surface the information about what apps they're using.
Yeah, 100%. That's interesting. And then, like, I assume you can see not just when they logged in last, but like maybe not to the layer of some of these other SaaS applications that do a lot of monitoring, but like how often are they?
Correct.
Like are they like is George only working for an hour a day?
Yeah, I don't know that we can necessarily tell you if you're slacking off for 7 of the 8 hours and only working 1 hour, but what we can definitely show is aspects of effectively how many times you've logged in, right, over the past however, whatever period, how often you're using Zoom instead of Teams, how are you actually integrating, whether it's integrating being in terms of the signing into it, is it using the social sign in, i.e., hey, log in with my Microsoft account, log in with my Google Workspace account, that click social login, if you will. We can show you that. And then there's also ways to show to just literally type in your name, email and whatever your password is. Yeah, we don't capture any of the password stuff, but we do capture if you logged in to Zoom and just went and typed it in, right? Rather than the easy click.
Okay. So from an so you it sounds like you built a platform, anybody can buy it, but you did create an MSP program. So what
Yes.
exactly does that mean? What does the MSP program do?
Good question. So again, a couple of our go-to-markets, the two major go-to-markets, and it varies slightly depending on the region, but are selling to businesses direct, whose IT staff uses it, or working with MSPs who manage IT on behalf of in a hybrid or full outsource, whatever, it doesn't matter so much. Our program is pretty straightforward. We're relatively in the early stages of our company, but it's pretty straightforward. We have a model for MSPs that's not usually what I would say is your typical SaaS application model with an MSP, which is they usually resell the application to their clients' teams. So like they resell Zoom, they resell Slack, whatever. Ours is a tool for the MSP, right? So from that perspective, we sell the MSP, how they bill, charge, if they do to their client, up to them. But again, being a multi-tenant platform, the simple structure of it is for the MSP themselves, they can use it even in their own company, no problem. There's literally no charge for the MSP to use it in their own company. For their management of clients, right? Whether you have 5 clients of 10 people each or whatever, it's based off of that. That's so how we work with them, how do we go to market with them is based off of effectively the employees that are under their management purview, regardless how many devices they have, how many applications they have, how many clients they actually have. So there's that. Effectively, it at its highest level today, the cool thing that we are literally looking for is like pitch out here to anybody who happens to be listening. I'm looking for what I call advisory partners, MSP advisory partners. And it's kind of like your customer advisory board that many people have been exposed to, or partner advisory boards, or whatever you want to call it. Points being is it's a small subset of MSPs who are going to help us build this solution. We have a few already that we're working with. They provide guidance in terms of what a roadmap could be, maybe should be from their perspective. they get deeper visibility, et cetera, and they get an awesome deal on working with us. But it's, we're looking for about a dozen. When you say, what's your program? That's kind of it. I mean, it's pretty simple in reality. Is we're out canvassing the country, the North American continent, and to some degree the world, looking for MSPs who need help in both managing that which they know from an application standpoint on their clients, premise, if you will, in their cloud, and that which they don't know. We're hoping to provide more efficiencies so that they can grow. The MSP, these guys they're tinkerers. They figure stuff out. But generally speaking, the average MSP company probably has somewhere around 10-ish employees, right? Some are super large, some are two people in a garage. But they're pretty strapped, right? And they're managing on average roughly around 40 or so clients and trying to deal with that. And if they want to get to the 41st, et cetera, and grow their business, probably are having to onboard more people to help do it, meaning their own company, right? Employees. So part of our pitch is we can help you be more efficient and grow your business without necessarily hiring the 11th person or something like that. And then being able to provide that value again out to their clients in terms of the, hey, did you know? Did you know George never logs into this app? Did you know you have a spend on these applications that is astronomical because nobody's using it? Did you know you have redundancy? So things like if it's a larger customer on their side, you have sales department went off and bought Zoom or something, and maybe the marketing team, unbeknownst, bought also a bunch of licenses. Nobody's controlling any of this, and they're spending way too much unless they consolidate on all these licenses one contract, they might get a better deal, right? And there's visibility. So a lot of the reasons why a company goes to an MSP is because they're like, managing IT is not my business, right? Maybe I'm a law firm and my law is my business. IT, whatever, I need help with that. I'm not hiring people because they're not, revenue add to us. So I outsource it. So this has given the IT folks the ability, or excuse me, the MSP folks, the ability in that outsourced IT model, more value, more tools in their toolbox, right? To be able to go out to customers and help them just basically be more effective in whatever their actual business is.
Fair. No, I mean, listen, a lot of people make that pitch. It's like the single pane of glass pitch that I've heard, I don't know, 24 years. And I'm like, there's not single pane of anything. It was sounded great. It just never happened. So there's been a lot of window marketing around different themes, but at the end of the day, this topic is not necessarily a new topic. It's just been an unsolved topic for a long time. And quite frankly, a lot of the traditional RMM style tools out there do not deal with the SaaS application. Yes, Microsoft, yes, Google, because everybody's using those, but outside of that, falls short. And so they're still dealing with traditional IT tasks. And like the world has progressed, SaaS is the way that things are being consumed now. And like it's a whole, right? So if the MSP doesn't know, they can't help. They can't help, then they get blindsided when, customer raises their hand and says, hey, can you help me with this? And you're like, what is this? I'm seeing this now for the very first time. What can I do for you? How do you even log in? All right. So that happens often. And quite frankly, there's a lot of MSPs out there that would surely, give you their opinion on what is and isn't good for MSP land. So the fact that you're looking for advisory, people is not a bad thing. At the end of the day, the fact that you have 300 plus applications that businesses are using, like they don't have a lot there's not a lot of options. So when you said this is a relatively new category, Gartner, Magic Quadrant, all that thing, yes, I hear you, because not a lot of solutions are out there that do this. We hear a lot about SaaS backup, but only for a handful of applications, right? Office 365, the suite, right? With all the pieces inside, maybe QuickBooks, maybe, Dropbox box, but then like stop. Well, what about the rest? Right. And so this is where things largely go unchecked. And, one more theme out there that has been bubbling around MSP land for some time. Oh, well, it's in the cloud. It's good. Well, I don't know if you've been around any IT people, but they all wear the The cloud is just somebody else's computer. It kind of is.
It literally
Ask,
is.
ask anyone that's on Amazon East that keeps going down over and over and over again. So and there's big names that get affected, right? Like Netflix, goes down when Amazon East goes down. So anyway, I digress. I love where you're going with this. I mean, obviously it can go in a lot of directions, right? It kind of feels like it's early days in this category.
It is.
And early days for your MSP program, right? But I like the idea and where it can go, because quite frankly, this problem isn't just going to solve itself, and it's only going to get worse.
100% agree. I mean, again, not to harp back on that topic that you remember being COVID, but that really accelerated massive amounts of SaaS application usage, and now consequently wasted aspects of it. But I don't have the data, but if you look at like what companies have been funded over the past couple odd years at various stages, there are a ton of application businesses that have been funded, thus making the problem to some degree exponentially worse or harder maybe to deal with. It is very early. I think the reality of life is from a roadmap perspective and such in our company, we're going to totally evolve, as will everybody else in the category or otherwise, into how we do all this stuff effectively. But I think it's an exciting time. I think it is truly a real problem out there. I talk to, like I said, MSPs about, hey, what do you know that your clients are using? And I say, well, I know what I know, but I don't know what I don't know, and things like that. And we're trying to give that visibility ultimately, and again, to make them more effective and valuable to their clients. And there will be new problems that come out of that we might venture into or not. I think the reality is these kinds of solutions are needed, and to some degree, we're kind of in an educational space right now. Being a relatively new one, category, etc. And the outset, like I mentioned, 500-ish customers today, but it's an exciting time, and I think we'll look back X years from now and say, where did this start and where did it go? And hopefully it's not going to be back to my original example if I was in that thing called voicemail, which basically, doesn't really exist anymore to some degree. At least
you'd be surprised, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, at least you don't want to. Heck, faxes still exist, right? So,
in this country it does, but in
yeah.
other countries like radio and fax have disappeared. They no longer exist, but not in our country. We love the fax machine, especially in healthcare. I don't know. I don't get that. Actually,
healthcare, insurance, and lawyers.
Up until a couple of years ago, you could only lock in an NFL contract by faxing it to the league office. Really? Fax? For sure? Like DocuSign? Okay, fine. All right, whatever. Talk about another SaaS app where people get licenses and they don't know.
Yes.
The DocuSign for sure. This is awesome. It is a new category. It really is, but a desperately needed one. I love what you're doing. I know, like I said, I assume more things are coming in what you're, but like the actual tripod of things that you do is super helpful, actually. And the fact, for anybody that doesn't know how to spell Josys, because I had to confirm I was saying it right, JOSYS.com. And if you go there, there's actually a tab that says MSPs.
There is.
Click on that. And so I assume that when you click on that and you want to get more information, guess who you go to? Probably Steve.
Yep, ultimately to me. And long and short of it is we've got free trials and such, and through that activity, when you click and come to me, we'll end up doing something like what we talked about here, but more of a kind of a demo environment, like what we'll do at some of these events that you rattled off at the beginning. Yeah, ultimately, if you all have any interest in the audience land out there, go to josys.com, hit that link, come to me. Let's chat.
I love it. And the fact that you can use it in the MSP for free. I mean, talk about try before you buy it. How many SaaS apps do you not know that your people are using? I bet you at least one.
I bet you way more than one, but yes, at least for sure.
I listen. Let's try this whole trick on yourself internally before you go and use it on your customer. I think you might be surprised. Steve, this is
Yeah,
super educational. Again, Josys, JOSYS.com. We recorded this session. We're going to post it to our YouTube page, MSPinitiative.com under sessions, rewind. Then you're going to go back, like, wait a minute, Steve, at minute 32, you said this. Can you show me that? That does happen, by the way. Don't be surprised. Can't wait to run into you at one of these events in this Q3, Q4 extravaganza, because they all come in rapid fire, and like I lost my hair doing this circuit many a time. Yeah, me and you.
join the club, man.
I got you. And by the way, don't be surprised if the Niners and the Eagles find themselves playing against each other sometime this year. It's gonna have to be in the playoffs because they're not in the regular season. But I don't think the outcome will be the same. I'm just gonna put it out there now. The season hasn't started yet. It is August 15th. It's recorded. I just don't think the outcome's gonna be the same.
It won't be the same outcome for sure, because we'll just probably beat you by more, but that's okay.
Oh,
You know what? We can play some wagers outside of this environment.
okay. I have been known to place a wager or two, so maybe when I run into you, we'll have to lock that in.
You got it.
Thanks everyone for watching. Again, check out Josys, JOSYS.com, or just look up Steve Weinstock. I'm sure he's on LinkedIn and all the other places you expect him to be. And I will. I'm gonna think about that wager, Steve. You just watch. We'll get to you.
I got you.
All right, my friend. Have a good one.